Good morning from Europe to Africa, and especially from Germany to Ghana. Capo is joining us. We read next chapter from Kwame Nkrumah, Problems of Governments. In our struggle for freedom, parliamentary democracy was a vital aim as independence. The two were inseparable. It was not our purpose to rid the country of the colonial regime in order to substitute an African tyranny. We wanted to free our people from arbitrary rule and to give them the freedom to choose the kind of government they felt would best serve their interests and enhance their welfare. Our struggle was fought to make our people free to practice the religion they chose, to give them the liberty to associate in whatever groups they wished, to create an atmosphere in which they could say, write and think freely, without harming their neighbor of jeopardizing the state. We introduced principles basic to the settled and established democracies of the world, such as the separation of powers between the executive, the legislature, and the judicature. We say executive, legislative, and judicative. As the repository of the people's, oh my God, it's early in the morning, I'm coming. As the repository of the people's will, the legislature is supreme. It is sovereign and unlimited in its enactment of laws, which are binding upon the people and the government. Election to the legislature is by universal adult suffrage, and men and women enjoy equality of rights and duties. That all persons in the state are equal before the law is another principle will enshrined in our Constitution. I mean, reading and writing to learn is hard, but to understand for real, I don't know, the way he writes. The government, on the other hand, has to responsibility of direction the affairs of the state and of initiating and executing policy. It is, however, at all times answerable to the legislature and could not rule unless it commanded a majority in parliament. For all legislation initiates becomes the law of the land only if approved by parliament, and parliament can at any time it wishes throw out the government. All of this in the recognized machinery of parliamentary rule in the old established democracies. In our condition as an ex-colonial country, with our existing pattern of tribal loyalties and traditional customer, strained by the supreme prime position of other loyalties and practices. It could not be regarded as extraordinary if the pattern proved too tight here and there or too loose in other places. Members of the maturer democracies will tend naturally to equate our conditions with those current in their own country, forgetting the time it took the nation to evolve to its present standard and forgetting too the economic and social conditions of our people. It is natural for people to look at another country through their own telescope and quite human to judge another's achievements or failings by their own experience. There is a tendency to forget that Britain's evolution into democracy was not altogether peaceful. It was a little over 300 years ago that they chopped all off the head of a king, made their middle-class revolution and installed Cromwell as their dictator. The feudal ties were not completely broken, and it required another revolution more than 2 centuries later with an accompanying social jolts to secure the base of that parliamentary democracy which the British people today mistakenly assume as a merit inherent in their national character. Mein Gott. This Kwame Nkrumah, he take breath and say something and say talk and explain it and explain it and explain it and explain it and then whew. The States of America fought a bitter civil war whose memories still condition attitudes and thinking to impose their union. Its constitution, based upon the affirmation of the equality of all men, took several years to find full acceptance, and even today its tenets are disregarded in many parts of the country. There is still strife in America over the application of the essence of democracy to all of its members. Conditions in Ghana today are comparable with those prevailing in Britain or France or America at the time when they were struggling to establish a free form of government rather than those which currently obtain in those countries. It would be fairer, therefore, to ask what was the nature of the regime in those countries then and make the appropriate adjustments for the development of liberal ideas in the world since those days. The economic position of our people is no better than that of workers in Britain at the same stage of their social and political development. Perhaps a little worse in some aspects. Their social services were just as primitive, their country-wide educational standards just as low. I think no one would deny that the maintenance of a democracy by the people of Europe and America at the parallel stage would have been a massive task. Yet, it is the task we faced in Ghana on our assumption of independence. This task might have been cased a little had we been blessed with a reasonable and not violently destructive opposition. A serious, well-intentioned opposition keeps a government alive to its responsibilities, guarantees extreme care in the preparation and formulation of programs, and underlines the need for sponsors of legislation to be able to justify their proposals. The essence of such discussion, if it is to be of benefit, is that it must be constructive. This is the strength of the opposition in the established democracies of the world. They recognize that they, together with the government of the day, proceed from major premise that they have a joint aim to advance the welfare of the people. Both have a vital part to play in the building of their country and the spending of its development. The government initiates, the opposition is constructively critical. Unfortunately, this has not been the case in Ghana. The narrowest interpretation of the term opposition has been the guiding principle for the opposition party both side and outside parliament. Their repeated rejection by the electorate convinced them that the possibility of gaining office by constitutional means was removed. They therefore embarked on a policy of obstructing the government without devising a program on which they would base an alternative one. Their politics have been narrowly regional in concept and often violent, abusive, and terroristic in action. Within Parliament, the castigation of the cabinet has been, so them, an end in itself rather than an instrument for securing better conditions for the people. The measure of their intent is that they seek to add to the difficulties of government and heighten the obstacles which need to be overcome, so that, with a breakdown in administration, they may get a chance of grasping the reins of office. It may be argued that some of these characteristics are present in any opposition party. This is true, but not to the same extent as in Ghana. Elsewhere, they are set in the context of an alternative overall program of government. The Labour Party in Britain, for example, follows a political doctrine opposed to that of the Conservative Party. Ideologically, they are widely removed. There are clashes over such concepts as nationalization. There remain, however, broad areas of internal and foreign affairs where there is a community of view. The opposition will make helpful suggestions but will not irresponsible oppose. Therein lies the strength of that democracy. The opposition in Ghana cannot boost this same sense of responsibility and maturity. So far, it has been mostly destructive destructive. We have seen the historic reasons for this in the revolution of the United Gold Coast Convention leaders from the mass movement I had achieved as their secretary, and the subsequent formation of the Convention People's Party to embrace that mass movement as the instrument for the achievement of freedom. The UGCC leaders never forgave me and my associates for proving the righteousness of our policy of self-government now. Again, the let me drink a drop of coffee, please. Sometimes brain must work by reading all this. The UGCC. I think 2022, this party is not existing anymore, or? Can somebody answer me this question? Is the UGCC still existing as a party in Ghana? That would be interesting to find out. They should forgive Kwame. They should forgive Kwame, because on the end now, 60 years later, is true. Is still the truth. The UGCC leaders never forgave me and my associates for proving the rightness of our policy of self-government now. In the results of the 1951 election. Thereafter, their opposition amounted to the virtual denial of independence and a reluctance for the British to leave. They were prepared to sacrifice our national liberation if that would keep me and my colleagues out of government. In colonial countries, endeavoring to throw off the yoke of imperialism, the upsurge of nationalism finds expression in a major movement embracing the popular aspirations for freedom and a better way of life. Oh God, I should change the chapter title into Peace for the World. Even where there is some disagreements among different local groups over the means to be employed in the attainment of freedom, the force which is brought into operation by the preceding power frequently secures their union on a broad national front. Thus, the nationalist movement represents the majority of the population. Those dissident groups pursuing individual or particularist aims opposed to the nationalist objectives are doomed to frustration. It is inevitable, therefore, that a free franchise and universal adult suffrage. The Nationalist Party gets elected with a majority that makes it appear to those accustomed to the more evenly balanced partisan politics of, for instance, Britain and America, that intimidation has been used. Oh my God. I should read this again and again. That's why I read it. I mean, hey people, everybody should start reading and writing, learning reading and writing, learning reading and writing. I, Laura Celestina, I try now to learn English reading. I cannot write, but I can read. I don't know. Everybody should learn reading, then we can read. This was greetings to my people in Africa, my youths, the future youths of Africa, the new leaders. They all must learn how to read and write. I repeat this last one because really, I try the last part. In colonial countries, endeavoring to throw off the choke of imperialism, the upsurge of nationalism finds expression in a major movement embracing the popular aspirations for freedom and a better way of life. Even where there is some disagreements among different local groups over the means to be employed in the attainment of freedom, the force which is brought into operation by the preceding power frequently secures their union on a broad national front. Thus, the nationalist movement represents the majority of the population. Those dissident groups pursuing individual or particularist aims opposed to the nationalist objectives are doomed to frustration. It is inevitable, therefore, that a free franchise of universal adult suffrage, the Nationalist Party gets elected with a majority that makes it appear to those accustomed to the more even balanced bipartisan politics of, for instance, Britain and America, that intimidation has been used. I, Kwame, reminded of the words of Julius Nyerere, when he spoke of the overwhelming support of the nationalist movement by the people of Tanzania. I think this is Tanzania, or I don't know. The nationalist movement which fights for and achieves independence in inevitable forms, the government of the new state. I would surely be ridiculous to expect that a country should voluntarily divide itself for the sake of conforming to a particular expression of democracy, and to do so during a struggle which calls for the complete unity of its people. No one should jump to the conclusion that such a country is not democratic or does not intend to be democratic. The popularity of the party that brings freedom continues into the period of full independence and is even enhanced where improvements in economic and social conditions are obtained under its government and its majority grows. Since this overwhelming majority in parliament carries through the government's policy almost without exception, it gives the appearance of a one-party regime. This is the pattern which has resulted in the states emerging from colonialism, a pattern which I have termed a people's parliamentary democracy and which the people of Ghana have accepted. However, to level against us as a result of this situation the criticism of authoritarianism, as has been done, would seem to suggest a contradiction in the Western idea of what constitutes democracy. Democracy, if we are to accept the Aristotelian description, is the law of the state that directs that our poor shall be in no greater subjection than the rich, nor that the supreme power shall be lodged with either of these, but that both shall share it. For if liberty and equality, as some persons suppose, are chiefly to be found in a democracy, it must be so by every department of government, being alike open to all. But as the people are majority and what they vote is law, it follows that such a state must be a democracy. This description has not been invalidated because our modern world has outgrown the city-state and all the people can no longer conventionally participate in government but delegate their right to their parliamentary representatives. The description has indeed been revalidated and enlarged to its widest extremity in Lincoln's concept of government of the people, by the people, for the people. That sounds good. Lincoln. That my party and I draw from much of the criticism leveled against us was that we should have divided up the mandate given to us by the people and handed over part of it to an opposition. If the will of the people is democratically expressed in an overwhelming majority for the governing party and thereby creates a weakening of the accepted two-party pattern, as for instance in Ghana, we, the government, are obligated to respect the will of the people so expressed. We have no right to divide our mandate in defiance of the popular will. The opposition, deprived of popular support, looked around for a means to undermine our authority. They found it in separatism. They demanded the virtual secession of Ashanti, the northern region, and what was formerly British Togoland, from the sphere of central Ghanaian authority. It was not their first attempt to cut off the nose and ears of the motherland in order to spit the face to spite the face of the CPP. Point. In 1956, when there was a plebiscite in British Togoland to determine whether it was to continue as a British Trust territory or to join with the Gold Coast and soon become a part of independent Ghana. The opposition party proclaimed its support for Togoland's continuance as a British Trust territory. The people of Togoland proved to be more freedom-minded than our opposition, and the plebiscite, I don't know this word, plebiscite, result was union with us. When we gained full independence, British Togoland became a part of Free Ghana. There followed, after the plebiscite, I have to Google this, the general election of 1956, to which I had reluctantly agreed in order not to prejudice the early grant of independence. This election brought the CPP back for the third time with an overwhelming majority. Is the CPP still existing in Ghana? I don't know. It's been a long time. The opposition had not done as well as they maintained they would do in Ashanti and in the Northern Territories. Even through these were their major strongholds, where they had the backing of the Asantene, and other leading chiefs. The CPP gained more than a third of the seats in Ashanti and almost half in the Northern Territories. In the rest of the country we had a landslide. We had proved indisputably that we were the only party qualified to speak in a national sense. The British government could not deny this proof, and independence followed. Yeah, praise Kwame Nkrumah. Here he is, greeting the world. Bye-bye. One world, one love. Peace for all of us.